So good morning. First of all, I have to excuse myself. I'm neither a plastic surgeon nor an aesthetic dermatologist. So it might be that I'm a little bit out of place here. But I think you've heard from Dr. Goldie's wonderful presentation that beauty is really more than just skin deep. So if we want to do aesthetic anti-aging, we have to tackle the issue of aging in general. And you already heard a lot about now regenerative medicine, stem cells, young plasma, and I want to introduce you to another concept of regenerative medicine, and that is also involving the telomeres. So, thing is, when we say we want to start and treat aging, then we probably have to do it the same way as we treat any disease. First of all, we have to understand what is lying behind this disease. Okay? If you don't know anything about glucose metabolism and insulin, you won't be successful in treating diabetes. If you don't know the underlying causes of aging, you won't be successful in treating aging. So, first question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we age? And the good news is, the bad news is the telecontrol is not working. No, the good news is this is a hallmark also in publications about aging, the hallmarks of aging, and the message of those very renowned authors was, we have more or less understood aging on a molecular level now. We know how we age. That is lesson number one. Lesson number two is, out of these 9 factors that they have identified, almost all of them can be at least modified. So we cannot yet stop aging, we cannot yet reverse aging, but we are on the brink of at least modifying the aging process. Aging is no longer a fate. And aging is also not just a monocausal disease. As many complex diseases, there are many underlying causes, and some of them are known for a long time. You all know the free oxygen, the free radical theory of aging of Denham-Harman. We know that silent inflammation, chronic low-level inflammation is an important aging process. We know that, for example, glycation is an important process in aging, the process where glucose is combining with proteins, for example, also with collagen and with elastin, and then they lose their elasticity, and that leads to wrinkles. So all these are very important, but probably one of the most important aging theories is the theory about telomeres being responsible for the aging process. And this also has a long story, and at the beginning of this story is this man, Leonard Hayflick. He's a pioneer of age research. And what did Hayflick do? Hayflick cultivated fibroblasts and eukaryotic cells something like 50 years ago, and then he saw that they replicate just a limited number of times. 60, 80, and then that was the limit. And at that time, people thought that body cells could replicate like bacteria, again and again and again. And Hayflick said, no, it's not like that. Even if I cultivate my cells very well, they don't replicate more than 80 times. And then he postulated something that at that time seemed to be completely absurd to the majority of scientists. He said there must be something like a biological clock in each and every of our cells in the body. And at that time, almost an absurd idea. And now we know that this program theory of Leonard Hayflick indeed is correct. We know that this biological clock exists. We know where it is in the cell, and we know how it ticks. And in fact, these biological clocks are the so-called telomeres. So these are structures that at the end of the chromosomes And telomeres play an important role in cell division, and with each and every cell division, they shorten, they lose a certain amount of their DNA bases. And once they have reached a critical limit, then the cell cannot divide anymore, then it really dies, and that's the end of the cell. So that is the telomere theory. You see here the exact base pairs that are lost with every cell division. And we know that by this, telomeres are really something like a marker now for biological aging. So by the length of the telomeres, you have a very good indication of your biological age. You know that we now divide between chronological age, that you know when you look into your passport and you can calculate it. Biologically, you can be younger or you can be older than that. And that is why anti-aging medicine is so much interested in finding markers for biological aging, and telomere length definitely seems to be such a marker. And it can be measured. One of the first laboratories that was Life Length in Madrid. Now there's a lot of laboratories offering this, and anti-aging medicine is developing quickly. We know that measuring telomere length is definitely a good marker for biological aging. It can be even improved if you integrate epigenetic markers, that is methylation of DNA. So combining these two things, that now obviously is the best thing to determine your biological age. So that's telomere length plus epigenetic markers. That is now state of the art in determining your biological age. And it's also not a marker only for biological age, it's also a marker for longevity. It correlates very well with the lifespan and the health span that you still have. And anti-aging is not only about living longer, anti-aging is also about staying healthy. We have to combine really lifespan plus health span, otherwise it is no use getting older. And telomeres are obviously not only responsible for prolonging your life, but they are also play an important role in a lot of age-related diseases, like metabolic diseases, like neurodegenerative disease, and so on. So we spoke about the biological clock, and I think it's a very good image, but we know that usually clocks, they tick the same way all the time. So it's everywhere now, it is something like 10:30. But the biological clocks, they tick differently. And they tick differently because they can be influenced. And they are influenced by an enzyme called telomerase. And telomerase is an enzyme that has the capacity to rebuild the telomeres. So they are shortened with every cell division, but there is sort of regeneration, and the regeneration of telomeres is done by an enzyme called telomerase. And I told you at the beginning about the Hayflick limits, about Hayflick studies on eukaryotic cells, and he said 60 to 80 times, that is the biological limits. There are some cells that do not underlie this limit. Germ cells, for example. Germ cells can replicate and replicate and replicate, and there is no sign of aging in germ cells. So they have reached, well, what we all dream of. They can live forever. And why is that? Because they have high concentrations of telomerase, which are restoring the telomeres completely. There are other cells that you have already heard about before, stem cells. Stem cells also do not underlie the Hayflick limit. Stem cells can replicate almost all our life because they have high concentrations of telomerase. So you see that telomeres and longevity and aging is not just a correlation that is really intervened. But, and now here comes the bad news, there are some body cells who also escape the Hayflick limit. Some of you might have heard about so-called HeLa cells. Henrietta Lacks was a patient who died in the 1930s of cervical cancer. So she's dead now for more than 80 years. Her cells, or at least the cells of her cervical cancers, live on and on and on. And in almost all oncological laboratories in the world, you find so-called HeLa cells. So these are body cells that keep on replicating. Why do they do so? Because they have high concentrations of telomerase. That, of course, is not the kind of longevity that we want in anti-aging medicine. That's the kind of longevity of cancer cells. And that is, of course, then also a big fear when it comes and so on. Yes, we have those cells that live longer because their telomerase is very active, germ cells, stem cells. But the question is, if we activate telomerase in body cells, is that not going along with a risk, an increasing risk of cancer? And that is, of course, something that we do not want to risk. So there is definitely, telomerase is a two-sided, two-faced topic. And the question is, can we influence it? And there are already products on the market that are exactly doing that. They are targeting telomerase, they are targeting telomere length, and that is, of course, also a step into regenerative medicine. If you avoid oxidation, if you avoid inflammation, if you avoid glycation, that is all preventive medicine. That is reducing stress, that is reducing damage. If you're tackling the telomeres directly, that is a step from preventive medicine to regenerative medicine. There you really influence the biological clock. And as I said, there are the first products on the market now. TA65 for a long time was probably the most expensive supplement worldwide as a telomerase activator. But as I said, there are some fears now that might increase cancer risk, and there are now already the first court cases in the United States, people taking TA65 who suffered cancer. That does not mean that this is the cause. I mean, 30% of the people worldwide will get cancer, so if you have 1,000 people taking a product, I mean, it's very likely that some will develop cancer. But anyway, the fear is still there. So there is another time block that is probably more, another product which is probably more safe. That's timeblocks. Timeblocks was developed by a team that first wanted to do something completely different. They wanted to develop a supplement against cancer. And that is mainly a German-Austrian co-production. And it uses a lot of substances that are very well known also in anti-aging medicine. That is epigallocatechingalate, which is the main ingredient of green tea. That is vitamin D, which is not only important to prevent osteoporosis, but plays a central role also in cancer production, barley grass, wheatgrass, and so on. So the one thing is, those are the substances. Another lesson that this working group has learned also is phytonutrients are not just phytonutrients. It depends very much also on where those phytonutrients come from, how they are cultivated, what is the terroir, and so on. So the ingredients of these things very much differ from where the plants are being cultivated. You can probably best compare that with red wine. Yes, red wine is red wine, but a Grand Cru from Bordeaux is something else than a 2.5 euro red wine that you buy at the local supermarket. Yeah? Why? Because the grapes were grown in different terroirs. You know, the processing of this is different. And the same is true also for phytonutrients. And that is why I also think there can be no generica about phytonutrients, because they are so very, very different. And we see really that the ingredients of the phytonutrients are completely different from what you normally get. So that is, I think, also a new message and a very important message when it comes to those phytonutrients. So we don't have the time to go to this in detail. We have only 15 minutes. But the message number one is, yes, look at the phytonutrients you use. Lesson number two is do studies. And very few companies that promote supplements really do studies. And there were clinical studies on TimeBlock, and we see, and they were published also in high-ranking papers, and we see that it really has an effect. So it's one of the few really anti-aging supplements that is really also based on good science. So we have the concept, we have the ingredients, we have the studies, and we have the product. That is how the product looks like. And it also considerates the new knowledge about chronobiology, also a new concept when it comes to supplementations. The same thing have different effects when you take them at different times of the day. So even this knowledge has been integrated into TimeBlock. So I think probably it's one of the leading products, anti-aging products now worldwide. And keep in mind, maybe in the future, if you hear two men discussing who's got the longest, it might be that they are talking about their telomeres. Thank you very much.